Okay, so this is section 5.1. We're going to be talking about what a random variable is, like this example right here, and then what a probability distribution is. Okay, so a random variable and probability distribution, that's the main topics of this section. They also talk briefly about probability histograms. Honestly, I don't normally cover that, but that would just be a graph of the probability distribution. Later on, we'll talk about how to find the mean, the variance, and standard deviation of a probability distribution. That's towards the bottom of the page. And then we'll talk about significance. A random variable is usually labeled with a variable, a letter like X, and it represents a single numerical value determined by chance for each outcome of a procedure. Okay, so if we look at this example, the experiment is we toss a fair coin 3 times. These are all the outcomes of tossing a fair coin 3 times, so we call this our sample space. And X represents the number of heads. So if you look at this, the number of heads you could have is 0 head, which is what we have right here, 1 head, 2 heads, or 3 heads. This right here is what we call a probability distribution. So let's talk about the probability distribution. So probability distribution is where we list each value for X along with its probability, and it can either be a table, a formula, or a graph. So for this one, it's a table. So each of these has the same chance of occurring. There's 8 of them. The probability of 0 heads would be this one outcome right here. So that'd be 1 out of 8. 1 head would be this one, and this one, and that's 3 out of 8. 2 heads would be these 3, and again, that's 3 outcomes out of 8. And then 3 heads is there's 1 outcome, so it's 1 out of 8 for that one. Okay, this next part I actually copied from the PowerPoint. Let me just kind of get to that here. Okay, these are actually in the PowerPoint right here, and then the next page. Actually, they're both right there. Okay, so to have a probability distribution, the following things must be satisfied. The first one says the X must be numerical values. That's what this says right here. And the second thing says if you add up all the probabilities, they must add up to 1. The third thing I didn't list on here, but that's important as well. Each of these must be probabilities, which means if I add all these, if I look at each of these, they all must be between 0 and 1. They all must be probabilities right there. Okay, so again, I don't have that in the handout, but that is in the PowerPoint. Okay, so let's look at this example down here. Actually, I'm going to pause and get a blank sheet of paper here. Okay, so a couple plans on having 2 children. Assume a chance of a boy or a chance of a girl is equally likely. First thing we want to do is list the outcomes. Then we want to find the random variable. And then the next slide, the next video, we'll talk about the mean, the variance, and the standard deviation. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is list all the outcomes. If you have 2 kids, what are the outcomes? So this is sample space. You get a first one's a boy, second one's a boy, first one's a boy, second one's a girl and then a boy, and then a girl and a girl. So we already did A. Now B represents the random variable. So what we're going to do is we're going to create the probability distribution of this information. Okay, so if X represents the number of boys, how many boys could you have? You could have 0, which is 1 out of 4, or 0.25. Okay, so that's 0 boys. You could have 1 boy, which is these 2, which is 2 out of 4, or 1/2. Or you could have 2 boys. And the probability of 2 boys is 1 out of 4, or 0.25. Okay, so going under the 3 things again, the X must be numerical, and that's correct. The probabilities must add up to 1. These all add up to 1, and that's okay. And then the third thing, which again I don't have here, I have in the PowerPoint too, is each of these must be probabilities, which mean they must be they must be between 0 and 1. So again, you can't have a probability that's negative, and you can't have a probability that's more than 1. So each of these must be between 0 and 1, and that's true as well. Okay, we're going to do the mean, the variance, and the standard deviation on the next video.